We have already here our next speaker, Sascha Ragtschaa from WeOwn, and he has the keynote with the title, The Old and the New, How Digital Assets Can Coexist Within TradFi IT Architectures.
Thank you very much. I will just start.
All right.
So I was quite happy to be here at the conference and see that there are no breaks and you can just continue. Unfortunately, there's a coffee break now, so the audience is rather slim. I'll just get right to it. My name is Sascha Ragtschaa. As mentioned before, I used to be working in traditional finance for quite a long time, 20 years. I was at Computershare. When you talk, a lot of discussions today were about registry, transfer agency, registrar. I used to work for the largest transfer agent registrar globally. In my latest role, I was the CIO. I moved in 2017. I founded my own business, my own company, together with a few colleagues from Computershare. And we built WeOwn, focusing on tokenization of financial assets, of assets in general, with a multi-asset blockchain, multi-blockchain approach, focusing on the issuance, the servicing, and distribution side of regulated and complex crypto assets and tokens. In 2017, we started off in Liechtenstein, because Liechtenstein was quite fintech, crypto blockchain friendly. With the Blockchain Act, we work quite closely with the government, with the regulator. We've also done a number of projects and activities in the UK, and over the last 12 months, we've been focusing on Germany. In terms of token management applications, what do? We have an entire technology suite for companies wanting to tokenize their assets. We have a marketplace solution, we have an investor solution, an issuer portal, a registry platform. We have voting and corporate actions embedded in our platform. We have wallet functionality, we have reporting capabilities, and we've built an ECN network for FX, for tokenized FX, and we have quite a large group of banks within that FX network focusing on post-trade servicing, but also digital assets. So we have an entire suite of technology. We've done a bit of market research in Germany over the last few months. It's not very scientific, but I think someone said previously in the panel that all the banks are looking at tokenization, blockchain, digital assets. I'm not sure it's quite true. This is all kind of public information, but we found about 61 banks or financial institutes in Germany with about 97 digital asset or blockchain use cases. Again, this is not very scientific. This is all publicly available information, but that's what we found. If you look at tokenization and what these use cases usually make up of, you have a lot of funds, equity, bonds, real estate, tangible assets, or tracker certificates as an example. But if you then look at the outlook in terms of tokenization, digital assets, based on research, and this is an HSBC analysis, but there's also BCG, EY, etc., PwC analysis, that by 2027, about $24 trillion opportunities will be in the digital asset space. Tokenized assets, security tokens. They could be worth up to about 24 trillion. Someone mentioned before 10 trillion or 24 trillion. However, if you look at the number of institutes currently doing POCs and projects around digital assets, it's only about 1% in Germany. If you look at 2027, and usually the scale-up period, the ramp-up period, the time it takes to effectively introduce and implement these products, if I would be one of those 99 institutions, I'd be quite concerned and I'd be quite in a rush right now. So, coming back to the main topic of this presentation, what are the challenges and how can tokenized assets coexist within traditional finance? The biggest initial point is all these assets need to be bankable in some form. you can't introduce a token on asset and it doesn't really work and is visible on the portfolio view of your customer. It needs to be embedded in the administration services, in the reconciliation process and the reporting side. We also think that digital assets should be treated as a distinct asset type and should also be reflected in the many systems and services. When I used to work for Computershare and I was running my own data centers, my infrastructure teams, my service teams, I had hundreds and hundreds of applications and solutions and services, many databases, and a lot of those databases were effectively running on mainframe systems, file-based. Yeah? COBOL was the programming language of choice, and that was a existing major market player in that space. Now, if you introduce digital assets into these environments, into a bank, you know, these guys, or even yourself here, maybe running traditional finance teams, you're struggling at the moment with transforming your mainframe file-based systems into relational databases. So, you know, you talk to these guys about cloud, you talk to these guys about digital assets, you really need to understand that the legacy is such a burden and takes such a long time and is so difficult to adjust and implement that you have to have a light touch approach. So you need to choose the right technology that fits for that client, that fits the environment. Yeah? I mean, a lot of people, especially in the blockchain space, are talking about real-time clearing and settlement, T+0. T+0 we know is already possible. It can be done within traditional systems. You look at the equity market, you look at the equity space, the debt space and all that. Any traditional finance company will tell you these systems work. There's no issue. Yes, it takes a bit of time. The settlement takes potentially 1 or 2 weeks or 2 days or 3 days, but they ultimately work because the systems around it work. So when you introduce digital assets or new technology, you have to really find something that doesn't work. And what does blockchain bring to traditional finance? In our registry space, we used to have massive problems with reconciliation. Yeah, we used to get data from the CSD and you have the 4 p.m. cutoff. If you're late, then your ISINs are blocked and the client's unhappy because it can't be traded on the stock market. Or, you know, you have housekeeping routines overnight. And those are all systems that work. They're managed by hundreds and hundreds of people. So when you introduce digital assets, they need to work with these housekeeping back-end services and systems. Yes, anyone can run a POC and a pilot in a sandbox within a bank or financial institute, but to really operationalize these elements and also give the back office operational teams the right tools is really important to productize it. And quite frankly, in the digital asset space, we're not there yet. It's very, very early days. All these pilots are running in silos, they're running on multiple blockchains, but they're not really embedded, which means they ultimately don't really add business benefit or tech benefit. Yeah? As a CIO, you need to wonder, are you going to introduce a new platform, a new technology? How are you going to manage that every day? And that's really important. So my pledge usually to these companies is also work with technologists and financial services experts. You need to understand the business environment to tokenize certain assets, but you also need to understand the domain and the technology. Don't rely just on consultants, on glossy things. You need to understand your operations environment, and technology companies can help with that. Another big piece is invest in your own people. Blockchain skill sets is very rare at the moment. So you need to think about when you move from traditional finance to digital assets in that space, you need to upskill your people. They need to be quite aware of what's a wallet, what's a private key, what's a blockchain. And anyone can learn Solidity because it's quite easy from a technical perspective, but it's hard to write good Solidity, as we've seen. Even the best developers make a mistake. So you need to invest in your people, in your talent, and nurture them and bring them on to the journey. And that takes some time. And that's with any technology. As I mentioned before, you need to consider your existing capabilities. You need to integrate vertically and horizontally. So if you, for example, run a bank, you have a service bus or middle layer technology solution, and you need to be able to plug digital asset capabilities and technologies into that environment. You need to look at the horizontal layer, the infrastructure, the data centers, Do you want to run it as a private, as a public, as a hybrid network? All these decisions need to be done in combination with the infrastructure teams. Don't mix and match too many technologies. Again, there's a lot of pilots running on multiple blockchains, as mentioned before, every week there's a new blockchain that's coming out that is being hyped. Stick to one or two and really run the trial end to end and try to productize it. Integrate into existing operations environment. As I mentioned before, you might have a network operations center, you might have a service desk, you have helper tools, you have housekeeping routines. Integrate these systems into that. And then, as I mentioned before, train and educate your staff. In terms of regulatory and compliance, how can these things coexist? I mean, every time as an IT head or as an IT lead or as a business lead wanting to introduce new technologies, you need to go through your risk and compliance teams, and they need to be your friend, and they need to be ready for the journey. I know it's difficult. They're not usually the most friendly and accepted people, but they can really make your life a bit easier when you bring them along the journey. And as similar as training the tech staff, you need to make sure your risk and compliance team understand. And the way you bring them across the journey, you help them. You help them define the new IT controls, the IT risk matrix, or risk assessments, probably a lot of compensating controls, which these guys usually love. New actions, new certifications, all these things help. So don't forget them, include them along the journey. Give them the right monitoring tools. You need to give them the right transaction tools, the right financial crime tools, the right KYC AML tools. And then make them aware that the environment will be quite dynamic. Germany's done really well. Liechtenstein started with the Blockchain Act. Now MiCA 2 might be around the corner. EWPG plus equity might come next year. So there's a lot of change, on the EU level. It's a very dynamic as the technology is, regulation is dynamic as well. So how did we solve this from a technology perspective? Simply, we built a crypto or digital asset gateway which links to the core banking systems or traditional systems. We've built a few adapters, we've built a few interfaces, we have a messaging layer, we have a message bus that communicates with the traditional systems, and we're able to give reporting and data and analytics tools to the operational teams. In terms of the monitoring, we also have built monitoring interfaces that will make the job easier for the internal teams. We've built fixed financial information exchange gateways with drop copies, RESTful APIs, and as some of you guys know, there's still a lot of FTP and SFTP services, and you need to be able to consume that. So whilst you have blockchain, everything is immutable, decentralized, you're moving data from A to B, you still have to consider your slower housekeeping backend systems. In terms of the token issuance workflow, to give you maybe an example, and it's a little bit small. You have effectively a layered architecture, and that's what we built. So you have the platform workflow. So you define the tokenomics, you define the chain selection, and with our product, you can define which EVM chain, or if you want to use our blockchain, if you want to basically deploy the tokens there. You have a issuance option, so I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but you can choose lazy minting, which means you can do everything fairly centralized, and then you can write things into a smart contract once you're comfortable with the setup and the token, the definition. In terms of the token, as I mentioned before, we have quite a sophisticated registry solution for tokenized assets, so you can define parameters and metadata with the token, you can define voting. If it's a security token, you can say the weighting of the vote, the share class, the demographic information, all that you can define. And then you say deploy as an ERC20 or ERC721, and it will ultimately, through a smart contract assembler, deployed to the blockchain. All of this effectively is something we have as a platform with capabilities around reporting and monitoring, and can be embedded into your IT infrastructure. There's a little tokenized FX case study we've done, which was an interesting project. So we've taken FX, transactions, and we've partnered with a company called DMA Link in the UK, and they run an electronic communications network at ECN, and they allow effectively large banks, prime brokers, liquidity providers to trade over an anonymous network. What we've done, we tokenized the FX elements, we made the post-trade process more efficient, and we are also currently working on a digital asset liquidity network, which is gaining a lot of traction. So what we've done there is we implemented a FIX, Financial Information Exchange API and gateway. We helped these prime brokers, liquidity providers to access the network through the FIX gateway, and we provided them with a simple reporting and administration dashboard to really look and review their trades. We have about $50 million worth of FX going through that platform at the moment as a trial period every day, but it's growing on a daily basis, and especially in the digital asset space, there's a lot of interest and a lot of activities to do the same through an ECN amongst known counterparties that are trading spot and anonymously. So just to summarize again, what are the key success factors for a combined crypto and TradFi offering? I think, as mentioned before in the presentations, no one knows which blockchain will win. Will there be one? You know, as we've seen in the IT space in the past, you have multiple operating systems, and they will probably have an existence. The same with blockchain. If you need liquidity, if you're tokenizing an asset that requires liquidity, you should probably go with a very liquid blockchain like Ethereum or any other EVM blockchain. If you need a more private, centralized, or governed network, you can use a private network. You can use our blockchain. Integration with core banking systems and traditional systems is key. You need to really consider the traditional operational systems and the environment. The third point is very, very critical for customers and clients these days. It's about sustainability. Choose the right blockchain that is, you know, sustainable, carbon neutral. Luckily, Ethereum 2.0, you know, checks the boxes in future. So look at the sustainability and your technology footprint. Flexibility is critical, not just for the technology team, but also for the operations team, for the business teams around it, because it's ever evolving, it's ever changing environment. And yeah, you need to be agile as much as you can. So yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any needs, if you want to talk about integration, talk to us. We've got a stand here. We have a new funds-specific white paper, how we tokenize funds. You can download that. It's an easy link to remember. But yeah, talk to us about TradFi and how we can help you to integrate. Thank you very much.